Good afternoon, and thank you for being here today. I am Senator David Sokola of the state of Delaware. It is my pleasure to serve as this year's Vice Chair of the NCSL Standing Education Committee. It is also my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker on this important and innovative topic as all of our state legislatures wrestle with the issues of responsive post-secondary education institutions prepared to meet 21st century challenges across our states. For just over 16 years, Michael Crow has served as the 16th president of Arizona State University. He is guiding the transformation of ASU into an institution that combines the highest levels of academic excellence, inclusiveness to a broad demographic, and maximum societal impact, a model he terms the new American university. Under his direction, the university pursues teaching, research, and creative excellence focused on the major challenges of our time, as well as those central to the quality of life, sustainable development, and economic competitiveness of Arizona and the nation. He has committed the university to sustainability, social embeddedness, and global engagement, and championed innovative initiatives leading to record levels of diversity in student body. Under his leadership, ASU has established more than a dozen new transdisciplinary schools and large-scale research initiatives, such as the Biodesign Institute, the Julianne Wrigley Global Institute of Sustainability, the Mary Lou Fulton Teachers College, and important initiatives in the humanities and social sciences. During his tenure, the university has more than quadrupled research expenditures, completed an unprecedented infrastructure expansion, and was named the nation's most innovative school by the U.S. News and World Report in 2016, 2017, and 2018. Crow was previously Executive Vice Provost of Columbia University, where he also was Professor of Science and Technology Policy in the School of International and Public Affairs. As Chief Strategist of Columbia's research enterprise, he led technology and innovation, transfer operations, established Columbia Innovation Enterprises, and advanced interdisciplinary program development. He is a fellow of the American Association for the Advancement of Science and the National Academy of Public Administration, and member of the Council of Foreign Relations and U.S. Department of Commerce National Advisory Council on Innovation and Entrepreneurship. The author of books and magazine articles analyzing science and technology policy and the design of knowledge enterprises, Crow received his PhD in public administration from Maxwell School of Citizenship and Public Affairs, Syracuse University. President Crow, welcome to the National Conference of State Legislatures. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah. Thank you, Senator, and good afternoon to all of the serving legislators that are here. Let me say thank you for your service. You know, we live in a time where democracy is always challenged by all the things that are happening. We've got 325 million people living in the United States now. Who would have thought that's 150 times the size of the population at the founding of the Republic? We have an unbelievably powerful and successful country that wants to continue to be that way against a rising planet that is rising global economic success and rising global technological success. And so we're sitting at a moment in time where you all as lawmakers and policymakers are really engaged at the heart of, in terms of education, the heart of the success of the country. Will we be able to modernize our educational enterprises, be they public universities, community colleges, or the K through 12 system? Will we be able to modernize into the 21st century our educational enterprises such that we can continue to be the most competitive, the most creative, the most successful, the most brilliant light in often what appears to be a sea of darkness in terms of the success of our democracy? And so I just want to say thank you to all of you for what you do. Let me start by, I don't know if my slide is up. There it is. And so is that visible there?
I think I goofed you up.
Is it yes or no? No. All right, those guys will work on it. But before, let me give you the top line. So Fantastic thing about moving to Arizona from New York City was I moved from a place that was paralyzed in many ways by complexity to a place that was open-minded and warm and welcoming for new ideas. And what I was asked by the governing board that I report to at the time was, can you help us figure out how to build a new kind of university? One that is simultaneously deeply committed to the success of children and citizens from every family, and a top-end research university capable of helping to create new things that can create new futures for the country. And I said, yes, that would be a fantastic opportunity. So we've been at that plow for 16 plus years. And let me tell you where we started and where we are in terms of the fruit. And then I'm going to walk you through a little bit about what we've been doing, and then hopefully have enough time for comments and questions. And so I know that all of us in this room have been faced with the fact that the system that we have inherited of public higher education is not affordable. Not affordable. You can't move to the level of educational attainment necessary to be the most competitive economy globally on the model that we presently have. It's not, we run all the numbers, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. So here's what we've been able to do. We have been able to change everything. We changed our culture from a faculty-centric culture to a student-centric culture. We changed our clock speed from the slowest unit of time being a semester to the slowest unit of time actually being a second. We actually went to what we call natural time as opposed to academic time. We decided that we needed to learn from others and innovate from others, again, further changing our culture by finding technological partners to advance the institution in new ways. We found 200 technological partners with learning platform tools. We've injected those into the institution. We've changed our design, our structure, our systems, everything, everything. And let me tell you the net result, and then I'm going to come back and explain a little bit about some of the details. So the net result is that I can tell you that we've done the following in the last 15 years. We're producing 3 times the number of graduates as we produced 15 years ago, at 5 times the level of socioeconomic diversity, meaning our students are now more representative of the actual population of the state and of the country than we ever were before. We're doing 5 times the level of research, not 4 times as in the bio, because we just had a breakthrough just this year. 5 times the level of research. More funded, oh, by the way, we produced 24,000 graduates in the last academic year. $600 million of funded research. That's the same level of funded research from Stanford, UCLA, or USC here on the West Coast. If you take out their medical schools, we don't have one. It's an unbelievable number. It's more funded research than any university in Europe, for instance, including Cambridge or Oxford. We've lowered the cost to the state to produce a degree by 75%. So their investment on a per degree basis is 75% less than it was. We've lowered our cost of all of our operations in every possible way on a per unit basis through efficiencies, changes, structural changes, redesigns, what have you. We've improved the 4-year graduation rate by 95%, driving students forward to higher and higher levels of excellence. So remember, 3 times the graduates, 5 times the research, fantastic changes in diversity, lowering the cost to produce a degree. Our faculty is the same size. Just process that for a second. Our faculty is the same size. We've altered the design and the technological framework and the technological structure of the institution. We've also learned how to partner. We've got 10,000 Starbucks employees who are a part of our online programs right now. Produced several thousand of them as graduates already. They graduate. These are kids mostly that went to college. You will not be happy to know that in the United States today, more than half of the people that start college never finish. They have no degree and no certificate. That's a huge, huge, huge mistake. Academia itself is designed to fuel that mistake. It's structured and rigid, and if you didn't get done by the time you're 22, well, it's hard to go back, it's hard to do this, it's hard to do that. If you don't finish college, what are you called? Dropout. It's a pejorative term. It's a pejorative term, it's a negative term, it's a terrible, terrible, terrible thing. So the other thing that we have done before I walk you through everything that we're working on is we've figured out how to restructure the entire identity of the institution. How do we reach learners, yes, at 17, 18, 19, and 20, who want to come and be fully immersed at the university from every family background imaginable, where we eliminate all financial barriers to entry, how do we then also take those people who are coming from the community colleges or coming back from the military? We have 7,200 veterans. How do we take people that are coming to college in different ways and engage them in the middle of this research university? We have 75,000 students on campus, 35,000 degree-seeking students online, and 600,000 learners taking at least one course from us. So we have a lot of people that we're engaged with, all with the same faculty, all with the same tools, all with new ways for us to engage. And so how do we make all that happen? Well, it means you've got to change who you are. And so here's a slide that you may want to spend some time. I apologize for it being overly academic, but there are 4 operating models for universities in the United States. There's the academy model, Harvard, Columbia, where I came from, Dartmouth, all the private colleges. What's the purpose? Enlightenment of individual students. How's it governed? It's governed by the faculty itself. Who's accountable? It's all internally governed. Whether primary funding mechanisms, enrollment funding from the state or endowments, what have you, that's one model. There's the state control model, which most of you operate your public colleges, public universities, and community colleges in, which I would say, by the way, of the 4 models on this little chart here, that is by far the worst, produces the weakest results, the highest failure rates. It is fraught with everything that you can possibly imagine. For instance, the assumption of management in the state control model is that there are traditional public managers distinct from the faculty, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not going to walk you through all of this other than to suggest that we've classified every college and every university in the country into one of these models. We know how they operate. We know how they move forward. There's the market model, which are the for-profits. A few of them have been successful. Many of them have not been successful. Many of them are trying to be successful. If they can get their act together and if they can find quality and enhance quality, they can be a way to greatly enhance adult education, in particular, outcomes and corporate education outcomes. And then there's the last model that we are a pioneer of called the enterprise model. So let's just take a look at that one. Our animating purpose, our reason for existence, is the social transformation of our democracy. That is, allowing people to be socially mobile as a result of education and the economic success of our state and our country. The second path to achieving public value, we connect instruction to knowledge at a social impact scale. We want to deal with everyone. The assumption of the faculty is that they're knowledge entrepreneurs. They're not technocrats or bureaucrats or untouchables. They're entrepreneurs, knowledge entrepreneurs. The assumption of management's drawn from the private sector, from the public sector, with the faculty acting, but acting entrepreneurially. And by the way, we say to people relative to our particular enterprise model, this is how we work. If you want to be at one of these other models, you should go and be there. If you want to live in a different kind of environment, you should do that. How are we accountable? Either we're making economic and social progress or not. Social progress, I mean, is social mobility. People who are not capable of being successful in the present economy, being successful in the future economy. I won't walk you through all of this other than to say that that second one, state control there on the left, that's the worst one. The most bureaucratic, the most complicated. So here's the deal that we have offered in our present modality, the enterprise model, to the political mechanisms in the state legislature in Arizona. We've now said the following. We don't have this resolved yet. We said we don't need any money from you for the university. We don't need any money. We'll take care of the university. All we want you to do is to fund half the cost of the education of an in-state student. And we'll keep that cost as low as possible. We'll keep it at least 50% below the national average. Now, we don't have an agreement on that deal yet, but that's a deal that we're willing to move forward with. So we live in a state, by the way, with no state-based financial aid, no regular state-based capital budgeting, only intermittent capital budgeting. So all of you, these are all the states' educational attainment goals, not every state, but most states, have basically decided by various mechanisms, including the business community, that we need to greatly enhance educational attainment to be more competitive. We're seeing some great economic growth here in this quarter, 4%. We're seeing great drive moving forward, coming out of the recession, continuing to come out of the recession. But we know that we're not as competitive as we should be. And we know by watching South Korea and Singapore and China and other competitors that educational attainment is absolutely essential to economic competitiveness. It's also absolutely essential to military readiness. Some of you should be saddened to know that only 25% of the people turning age 18 in the United States are even able to be considered for military service. They are either undereducated, didn't graduate from high school, drug disabled through their own actions or behavior, or physically unfit. That's a scary thing. So to be competitive economically and to be competitive militarily, we've got to be constantly changing and adjusting. So we evolved this charter, a unique charter for the university. It says basically three things. We will measure our success based on who we include in the university and how they succeed. We will not measure our success on, we didn't admit 95% of the people that applied, and so therefore we're a great university. That is as close to a crock as you could possibly imagine. I am a great university because I don't admit most of the people that apply. If our public universities, and some of them have, move in that direction, I can guarantee you that we will be underprepared for the economic challenges that lie ahead of us, that we'll be underprepared for the military challenges that we always have to be prepared for. The second part of our charter is that we'll do research that in a measured way has public value, not just academic value. And lastly, and I think probably most importantly, we take responsibility for the outcomes of our community. If K through 12 is not doing well, that's our fault. We renovated our College of Education down to its foundation and rebuilt it in its entirety, because it was not contributing to the level of educational outcomes by producing the teachers that we needed to produce, at the scale that we needed to produce them, at the skill that we needed to produce them, at the intellectual capability that we needed to produce them. So you do all these things and you end up being called by some the most innovative, which also means the most hated. Yep. So we did beat these other schools that you see listed here. We like that Stanford and MIT were second and third. But you can see who else is on that list. And these are great schools, great universities, great things going on at these schools. But we get recognized as being the most innovative because there are no sacred cows for us. We have one objective: to make Arizona more competitive, to make individuals more successful, to help people to move forward through higher and higher levels of personal attainment and social mobility. So these are the three public universities in Arizona. We're the gold one. The blue one is the University of Arizona, a classic, historic, very successful land-grant university. And the green one is a very successful public college in Flagstaff called Northern Arizona University. Now, in our new model, just look at the assignment we have been given. So we've been told greatly increase enrollment, greatly increase the number of degrees that are developed and produce, greatly improve and enhance the share of high demand degrees in nursing, in science, in math, in engineering, and at the same time become the leading research university in Arizona, all at the same time, all from the same institution. And oh, by the way, there's no more public investment. So that's our assignment. We're well on the path to attaining that assignment by reconceptualizing everything in the enterprise model. So this is a little bit on cost, and so these are, we're in a thing called, since we're in California and just a few miles away are two Pac-12 competitors of ours that we hate to lose to, and they're hard to beat, UCLA and USC. We also play Berkeley and Stanford and Washington and other schools for any of you that are from Pac-12 states. So this is the total amount of tuition dollars and state appropriation dollars per degree awarded at every public, very high research university in the United States. You can see where we are on the right side of that equation. That means lower. You can see where the median is at $81,000. You can see where the University of Arizona is, our sister school, right in the middle. And then you can see the local school, UCLA and UC Berkeley. The highest, by the way, on the far left is Rutgers. So we have figured out, taking dollars from state appropriation and dollars from tuition, and we work on a cost-effective basis, which is that means then that the deal that we've tried to propose to the governor and the legislature of just give us money for the students and half of their cost of education, that's a deal. We don't need money for anything else. This is the tuition revenue from various sources as we move forward, including our online sources. Once we decided to open up the university faculty to access by citizens who hadn't finished college, or somebody 35 years old who wants to pick up an electrical engineering degree, which we now have, as the first fully accredited online electrical engineering degree, fully accredited online for undergraduates in the world. We got 1,200 students in that thing. We have changed our ability to generate revenue for the institution while serving the state also. So you can see the slopes of those lines. Now, in terms of enrollment at the university, what this shows you in the gray was that this is by family income. Less than $20,000 of family income is the far left. This is our freshman class in 2002, 2009, and 2017. Basically, the gold will tell you that we've now driven the university in scale. We've increased the size of the freshman class and moved it more into the family incomes that people actually have. So our median income for an incoming freshman is about the same as the median income for the state. That's highly, highly, highly unusual. So what this tells you is that whatever we've been doing, this is just looking only at our freshman class, 12,500 freshmen this August, 11,000 transfer students coming in from community colleges. We figured out how to scale the university, how to scale the class, how to move the class to be more representative of families from every single income level. So our student body is, for the first time in our history, completely representative of the entire socioeconomic diversity of our state. Now, how do we do that? This is the number I want you to see on the far right, $2,328. That's what we call our average net tuition. Our in-state tuition is about $10,500. We apply this financial aid model across these family incomes. Blue is the money we contribute to this process from net margins that we achieve through our online activities and other activities. Green is the federal Pell Grant aid. Orange is state gift aid, which is very limited. And gray is private gift aid. What I'm going to tell you is that number, $2,300. That's our average net tuition for over 40,000 in-state undergraduates. There's no loans. That's just their cost after grants. So we've been able to make this work financially also. First-generation college students, when we started, we had about 7,000 first-generation college students in the student body. In 2017, last year, we had approaching 25,000. This year will be over 25,000. Call that a four-fold increase in first-generation college students being able to come to ASU. I'm a first-generation college student. No one ever went to college in my family. My parents were teenagers, ran off. My dad joined the Navy, had me down the road here in San Diego. And so here I am. And so it's a long story, a sordid past. And so the notion here is if you don't get more kids into college that come from families where no one ever went to college, we will not be as economically competitive as we could be. And that doesn't mean you got to give everything up. It means you got to be willing to do this. You have to be willing to grow. You have to be willing to expand. You have to be willing to diversify. You have to be willing to change. You have to be willing to change your structure, all these things. So how many of you think that we need to produce more engineers? There's a shortage of engineers in the United States. There's a really significant shortage of engineers. So we said, okay, let's produce some more engineers. So take a look at 2007, 2008 on the left side. That's the size of our engineering school in 2008, 8,000. Our engineering school this year will be above 22,000. 22,000 students, 18,000 on campus. 5,000 more women in engineering than we had in 2008. Thousands of more kids from minority families, Native American families, Hispanic families, African American families than we had because we did what? We eliminated every engineering department. We restructured the entire school. We changed the entire leadership. We changed to grand challenge-oriented schools. We put in new technologies, new changes, change, which then means that you can produce this change in the number of degrees that are granted from this engineering school. Significant change in these degrees, and that then changes the economic performance of our region, and we're seeing that. We had 8,000 companies recruit at our engineering school last year, 8,000. So we also use technology to change retention rate. So retention's a really important thing. It has been in the past that family income and coming in with a B average from, one way for universities to get great really right away, I'm going to just add this story. So people would say to me when I took this job, well, if you want ASU, Arizona State, to become a great university really quickly, the fastest way for you to do that is to cut out the bottom half of your freshman class. Cut out the weak, those coming in with B averages. I said, why would I cut out people with B averages? Well, that's how you get great. Well, that's not going to be our path to great, which means then those schools that have students coming in with only A averages, like UCLA down the street here, which has only students with A+ averages, in fact, they have very high retention rates and unbelievable graduation rates. I'm surprised they lose anybody. I'm surprised those kids even need to go to college. Just give them a degree and move them on. Some of the rest of us actually need to go to college. We actually have to learn that stuff. These kids come in already knowing it. So in our particular case, we've dramatically increased freshman retention and graduation rates. Dramatically. This is our 4-year graduation rate change. The other universities on the right, Oregon State, Georgia State, Kansas, Purdue, all those universities are a part of a thing called the University Innovation Alliance that I'm the chairman of. 11 universities, 500,000 students. We're proving out the point of how to produce more graduates. We're innovating together. But those are the graduation rates, those X's on the right of that chart. So we're now we have the highest 4-year graduation rate of any university that admits A and B students. Research. You can see where we started out in 2002. We had around 100 million. We just got our count, 600 million, looking at FY18, the year that just ended. I can't begin to tell you the changes that this results in. Changes in the students and the way that they learn, changes in their engagement, changes in spin-out companies, changes in economic partnerships, changes in alliances, changes in economic outcomes. So this has been a tremendously positive thing for us. It's also considered impossible to do this while you're admitting an egalitarian-based, broadly scoped, large-scale, highly diverse, including B student and largely, or not largely, but many poor students also, and do this at the same time. So anytime you hear someone say that you can't do these two things together, they don't know what they're talking about. You can do them together, you just have to want to do them together. So these are some of the outcomes. If you see another name of another school, it means we beat them in that topic. And so the reason I put this slide up is because one of the things that we get for doing the things that we're trying to do here is we get a huge ration of whatever you want to call it. People are very, very skeptical. You can't be big and be very good, which means back to you all as legislators, then you better be able to pony up to build another 1,000 universities. You're not going to pony up to build any more universities. And so you got to find new ways to do these things. And so when we say you can be big, you can be good, you can be scaled, you can be diverse, you can do research, you can do all these things, you can make these things work, you can take advantage of all the technologies that you have available. Starbucks partnership that we have called the College Achievement Program. They have 70,000 employees that didn't finish college that have debt. In the present system, 98% of those people will languish, never finish college, and struggle to pay off debt. So what we hear about is the college debt crisis. There isn't a college debt crisis. There's a college completion crisis. Your debt becomes a totally different thing if you finish. If you do not finish, your debt is like an anchor. And so it's college completion. Who do you want to hold accountable for college completion? You better start holding people like me accountable for college completion. So we went into Starbucks. We got 10,000 of their employees now as our students. 7,000 on degree tracks and 3,000 earning their way into the university through a special program that we have. Now, when we do these things, all these other schools that you see on this little chart here, they're saying, well, that ASU, they're just too big. They can't be any good. They don't graduate everybody. They can't be very good. In fact, I'm in a few battles here in California right now with a bunch of nimrods that just keep coming at us and coming at us and coming at us to tell us that somehow this model doesn't work. And so we're going to show you how the model works. We're going to beat you in everything. Yeah. So I was a heavyweight wrestler in high school and a javelin thrower in college. And one of the things you learn in heavyweight wrestling is how to lose but not be killed. Heavyweight wrestlers are grizzly bears with the hair shaved off them. And so, at least a lot of them that I wrestled. And so what that means is that the team that we put together at ASU is a team that's highly focused on winning. Not winning for the sake of winning, but winning for the sake of actually demonstrating that the public university system in the United States can innovate, can change, can drive different outcomes, and can help our country to be more successful. So what is the 4-year graduation rate? The 4-year graduation rate at most public universities in the United States. What's the 4-year graduation rate of the California State University system? Anybody here from California? A couple of people? It's under 20%. 20%. Okay. We got to fix that. So that's the story. That's what we do, and happy to answer any of your questions. Thank you.
All right, I see. Do we have somebody with a microphone for the? Okay, please. Great. That was very interesting, Dr. Crow.
Oh, and by the way, I'll just say that you're all welcome to visit anytime you want to visit, because what you'll see right away is how an enterprise-oriented university works, and how we partner and how we link and how we leverage capital and how we make things happen. So,
Please give us your name and your state.
yes.
My question is now, the only way I can figure you're doing it is a lot of online. Is that the secret? A whole lot of online?
No, Senator, that's a piece of it. So at the core, what we've done, we now operate in 4 realms, what we call Realm 1, full immersion, on-campus, technology enhanced. So everything that we've learned, we've empowered our faculty. The secret is the empowerment of our faculty with technology so that they can reach more people, so that they can be more impactful, so that their desires and their needs can be met. That then allows you to do online because your faculty are empowered on campus. The thing that we've been able to do online is too simple of a term. What we found is ways to take tools that were out there and create personalized learning pathways for students, particularly on subjects related to math and science. So math and science are the bugaboos. We built intelligent, tutor-based, unbelievable, open-scale, adaptive learning systems where you or I could take this course right now, today, college algebra, and we would be able to refresh our thinking or renew our thinking if we hadn't taken it in the past, because we built systems that allow those things to happen. So it's not online, but it is technology that enhances the learning process, Senator.
Follow up. I think you said 35,000 students on campus. Is that right?
75,000 on
Okay,
campus
okay.
pursuing degrees, 35,000 online pursuing degrees, 600,000 more online taking a course.
Okay, so that's how you leverage it. In terms of how do you pay for this?
On the paying for it, so the paying for it, first, the technology on campus lowered our costs. So for instance, freshman math, we could get 3 times the outcome for half the cost.
By having larger classes online.
Well, not just online. So it's not online.
Okay,
It's the technology tools, which online would be sort of a
part of it.
Yeah, a part of it.
I got
yes.
it.
But then it does turn out that our online activities do generate a margin that then allows us to reinvest in the rest of the institution. Yes.
Then the second part, instead of in addition to technology, how you afford to do this, is buy-in from the business community, the companies that want to send their employees to ASU.
Yeah.
And working out a partnership with them. Is that right? No,
So we have a partnership with them, but we also have 200 technology partners that are working on learning technology platforms with us. So we also have partnerships, public-private partnerships for investment. We have partnerships with companies relative to recruitment. We have partnerships with companies relative to technology. So you have to be able to manage the university in a realm slightly different than a state agency.
Can you give us specific examples, factual examples, rather than generic language?
Yeah, well, so we have a unit called Ed Plus at ASU based in Scottsdale that has 200 technology partners built into that unit. The staff is about 200 people. Those 200 people with those 200 technology partners then are able to leverage the other 3,600 faculty members that we have and the other 25,000 staff that we have in ways that our productivity, as I indicated, has gone through the roof. I mean, and so there's 200 companies in that unit that work as our partner.
Thank you.
I guess I should ask if Ben or Joan had anything that they wanted to add to.
I think, no, this is good.
Okay, all right, we'll go right here. Yeah.
Kim Coleman, Utah. So even before that, though, how do you, why did you go there? So I think we have this system that perpetuates the same traditional historical model. And as legislators, we want to make you do something. I mean, we want to create laws to kind of nudge you, force you, make you. But I'm also hearing that you want that it has to happen sort of It has to happen at that ground level. What can we do as policymakers to sort of nudge that innovation along? Because right now, our universities just ask us for $1 bazillion every year, and we say, okay, and keep doing the same thing that you're doing. We don't have any pressure from the legislature.
It's a complicated process. I don't want to take anything against lawmaking. Lawmaking is not a way to help a university to be more effective, I will say that. And so it turns out that in the mode that we're in, which is we don't operate as a public agency, we operate as a public enterprise. So we operate under the authority of the Constitution of Arizona. We are invested in by the legislature of Arizona, the people of Arizona. We're governed by representatives of the people of Arizona. So I report to a board of citizens who can, call up a phone call later this afternoon and get rid of me if they didn't like this speech. And so, what's worked for us, and our former speaker, Andy Tobin, is here. What's worked for us has been negotiating freedom for the university to be assigned a series of goals, to be able to pursue those goals with flexibility, creativity, partnerships, not operating like the Department of Motor Vehicles, not taking anything away from them. But we're not. If we have to operate as a state agency, there's no way to do much of the things that I was talking about. And so for us, it has been, and this could be a longer conversation, the freeing of the university and making it an outcome responsible entity, as opposed to a governed rule-based entity. So if you go back to my very first slide and look at that thing, state controlled, I can tell you what the performance is and the outcome. So those then every year are just negotiations about investment. Now, we need investment also, but that's not the only thing that we have negotiated from the legislature. We've negotiated all kinds of things from the legislature that have given us more freedom of movement, ability to do this, ability to do that. That has then freed up the entire mentality of the organization. So once the organization is no longer operating like the Department of Motor Vehicles, which must operate in a certain kind of bureaucratic structure, then you're free to be more innovative, more creative, more adaptive, more partner-oriented, and more responsible for outcomes. And so my board holds me accountable for that one picture that I had up there. So this one. So these are the stated metrics. So I have been asked by the duly appointed, by the governor, confirmed by the state senate regents, to figure out how to move enrollment to 140,000, 130, 140,000. We will exceed that. To produce 16,000 high-demand degrees per year when we were only producing 5,000 per year in 2008. I can guarantee you no one in the country, no other university will do that. Because no other university is being asked to do that. We're being asked to do that. Share of total degrees while expanding research at the same time. So this is our driver. Then when I go back to my board and I say, well, here's the project that we have with a private sector partner to build a research building in downtown Phoenix, and I need board approval to be able to move forward with this deal, well, we get that deal. And so for us, it has been the changing of the way that we operate. So if you go back to this slide, so the animating purpose of all bureaucracies is stated in the phrase organizational preservation. The animating purpose for us is not preservation of the organization. And so state control, in my view, is an antiquated, older style model not in tune with. So it's kind of perhaps a slippery answer to your question, but it's a completely different approach. Yeah, you gotta hire. I fired every dean. I mean, if you have presidents of your college and universities that can't fire their deans or other people and live to talk about it, then you got the wrong system and you're never going to go anywhere. And so, yeah.
Senator Stevenson.
Senator Howard Stevenson from Utah. It's
Howard,
good to see you again.
Nice to see you, Senator.
We
We text a lot. So.
Right. We've been to your campus many times,
Yes.
and I'm so inspired by what you're doing. Clayton Christensen, the most respected business advisor in the world from Harvard, says that within 10 to 15 years, half of all American colleges and universities will be bankrupt. That's a pretty bold statement, prediction for somebody to say, but he says, you're not one of them.
Yeah.
And what I have found as I visited you, you don't keep a secret sauce. You are totally transparent. You just want to evangelize what you're doing, not keep it to yourselves.
Right.
So help us understand how we can grow the leadership and get people like you with the backbone to fire the faculty senate, to fire the deans, and to make this happen in our state so that we don't go the way of the dodo bird, as Clayton Christensen is predicting.
So the key to everything is finding academic leaders who are committed to the outcome, like this charter that I put up here. That's what they're committed to. That's what they're focused on. Who are willing to take on these massive changes. So in California, in a game of chicken the last few years, the legislature said, I'll only give you this much. The governor has said this. The university has said, well, then I won't admit any students unless I'm paid by the legislature to admit this number of students, because the model is I'm not admitting anyone unless you pay me to take them. Well, we have just the opposite view. We're taking every single qualified in-state student, period. And we have to adapt to them. And so the key in all of these things is to allow your universities to be flexible, to be adaptive, to work with others, to work in leagues together, but not athletic leagues, to work in leagues for innovations, leagues for solving problems. We're now offering the University of New South Wales nuclear engineering degree at ASU because I don't want to build a nuclear engineering faculty. They have a great nuclear engineering faculty, so we've integrated that faculty into our activity. We're offering a new international public health degree with King's College out of London because I don't want to spend all that money doing that. They've already spent all that money doing that. And so what happens in academia is that every little nest thinks that they're like a little cottage in the woods. Every college and university wants to operate and sit on its own basis. Don't let them do that. Drive them and force them to network and to link and so what will happen is that Clayton Christensen's outcome may occur in a different way. The colleges and universities will all become tied in together, working together, innovating together, achieving things together. So look up University Innovation Alliance, uia.org. I'm the chairman of that. 11 universities, Purdue, Ohio State, Michigan State, Central Florida, Georgia State, Texas, Kansas, UC Riverside, Iowa State, ASU are a part of all of that. And what we're learning to do there is to innovate together. So it's a league for innovation. Well, maybe there needs to be a league for engineering. So in Utah, maybe all the schools in the West should be working in ways where we're tied in and working together, using technology as the way to do that. Yep.
David Blount, State Senate, Mississippi. Could you please give us 2 or 3 examples of the first institutional changes you had to make internally when you began to implement your vision at Arizona State, and then 2 or 3 things that you had to go ask your state legislature to let you do so that you could do what you've done at Arizona State?
So the first 2 or 3 things that we had to do internally was I had to capture the institutional culture, which was on a normal track of faculty centrism, and move to an institution based on student centrism. We had to change the clock speed of the university. If any conversation was going to take longer than a semester, I considered it to be worthless. We're doing important stuff. We don't have 4 years to determine whether or not we're going to advance some new kind of major to serve some company or something like that. So we changed clock speed. I think the other thing that we did was we found a common purpose through our charter. Many universities have generic charters or ancient charters or things that they've never looked at. They don't even know why they're there. And so the thing that I said is I don't care what's going on at any other place. I don't care what's going on at Mississippi State or Ole Miss or Southern Mississippi or any of the great schools in the state of Mississippi. I don't care. They need to do what they need to do, and we need to do what we need to do. So we separated ourselves from the standard issue of replication. To the legislature, we went to them and said things like, we'd like to pay for our athletic facilities by taking some of our land and using it in a real estate development, allowing us to get revenue from that to pay for all of our athletic facilities. They said yes. The legislature went to the legislature with a new technology that we developed to convert sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide into a liquid fuel, methanol. And they said, we're not going to give you any money. We don't believe in picking winners. We're not giving you any money to help your technology project. And we whined a lot about that. And they said, you whine all you want. We're not giving you any money for that. And so we stopped whining. You can only whine for a little while because then it becomes obnoxious. And so then they said, but what we will do is we'll give you a law that would give a tax incentive to a person to develop your new technology if that technology ever found realization. And so those technologies are still speeding towards that outcome. So those are two things that the legislature did. The legislature also, I think, has been progressive, using that word in its true definition, has been creative and progressive in basically not meddling in the universities, basically focusing on outcomes. Yeah, we're going to cut you by this and cut you by that. We had a 61% cut per student from the state legislature that's not been restored in 2008, 9, and 10. And so those are significant cuts. But then what we now have is basically a block grant that comes with the expectation that we'll take that as almost like an endowment payout, and then use that endowment payout, which you look at it from a different perspective, and then generate all of this other revenue from around that. The state legislature has also been, and this would be true in comparison between Arizona and Mississippi, I know a little bit about Mississippi, very, very open to the universities being operating as enterprises, operating quickly with speed, sometimes subject to certain rules and constraints that the state has, and sometimes not subject to those rules and constraints, but under certainly auditable outcomes and so forth and so on, but with substantial more degrees of freedom. Those have been powerful things that the legislature has been able to give us. In fact, anybody from Wisconsin? So Governor Walker, a few years ago, tried to do a deal in Wisconsin with the University of Wisconsin in which he said, I'll give you all these freedoms and I'll give you a little bit less money, and then you go out and find more money with the freedoms that I've given you. All the freedoms on his list we already had. We'd either gotten approval from the legislature for them, did them, and so that's how we ended up on that. So I hope that answers your question. So.
As a member of the International Study Group, one of the things that we've identified is high-quality teaching and being able to, and some of the countries that we studied made big transitions in how they develop their teachers, and you kind of touched on that a little bit in your remarks. I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit more, especially for K or pre-K to 12 education, so that people are ready for your institution.
So when I took office, we had an education college that had become mired in fighting largely with political forces in a charter school versus public school, charter school versus parochial school, no choice versus choice kind of political argument. And I said, that's not really our job. Our job is to produce the best teachers and the best principals and the best superintendents that we can possibly produce. And so we fought for a while, and then I decided this isn't going to work. There's no fighting here. We're going to have to change this. So we basically restructured the entire college. We exited 45 faculty members into either retirement or other colleges. We then raised $150 million to reconceptualize how we produce teachers. We found 2 new deans that could help us through their leadership and their genius to create a whole new way to produce new teachers. We built a teacher tracking tool, which allows us to see the performance of all of our graduate teachers out in the workforce. How did their 4th grade math students do? How does that correlate back to what we do? So we built a loop of data and a loop of interaction. We then built, we did a study on what schools are successful. We then launched and built what are now 5 charter schools that we operate as public schools in various charter configurations. Another thing the legislature gave us the authority to do. We then use those schools to demonstrate that every kid can graduate. We have 100% high school graduation. Every kid can go to post-secondary. These schools are 85%, 100% minority, 100% Title I. These are schools in very challenging communities. And so we did that, and that then informed us again. We started private schools that then informed us again relative to how to produce a teacher. And then lately we've been working a lot with the Kern Foundation in Waukesha, Wisconsin, on how to create a value-oriented, new kind of innovative way to produce teachers. And so we've gotten a lot of philanthropy and a lot of outcomes. And so, and then we changed the admission standards to our teachers college. It was no longer going to be just the students who were against math for their entire life, who never wanted to study math no matter what. So we've been able to work on that also.
All right, we are going to transition, but let's thank Dr. Crow for, and I go to Joan, I believe, at this point, right? Okay, come on.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Joan Wadiska, Senior Federal Affairs Counsel at the National Conference of State Legislatures. I'm based in Washington, D.C. Myself and Ben Boggs, who's going to speak after me, we are your team on higher education. I handle the federal-facing issues, Ben handles those that are state-facing, and together we really enjoy working with all of you. So I've been asked to briefly frame what's going on in Washington, D.C. You heard from Dr. Crow. He is obviously a disruptor, an innovator. He is a leader in higher education today. You, as state leaders, you're stuck in the middle. What I'm just about to talk about is the glacial speed of what is occurring in Washington, D.C. And you stand at the middle between the innovation that is required to keep competitive with business, to the very slow and deliberative process we have in Washington, D.C. The last time that Congress reauthorized the Higher Education Act was 2008. Think back to what was going on in our economy in 2008. We were coming out of the second worst economic crisis in the history of our country. All new jobs that have been created since 2008, 2/3 of all new jobs require medium or advanced technological skills here in the United States. The economy upon which the 2008 reauthorization was built is totally different today because of globalization and technology. And you embody precisely what Justice Brandeis spoke of, which you, the states, are the laboratories of democracy. You allow our nation to experiment without risk to our nation. And so that's the juxtaposition that you find yourself in. What's going on in Washington, D.C., how they discuss higher education and the higher education reauthorization, we want to frame for you what that debate sounds like so you understand the kind of the stakes that we have and the importance of state leadership at this time. The question of affordability frequently comes up in Washington, D.C., and there are many that believe that states are to blame for college debt and the cost of college in the United States. And they will say the states, which ultimately is the state legislature with your power of the purse, has not done enough for college students in the United States. It's simply not true. It's simply not true. The number one component of state spending year over year is K-12 education. The second largest component is healthcare. The third largest component is higher education. States on average invest more than 13% of total state spending into direct aid and institutional aid to ensure that college is affordable. What's interesting about that number is that actually that states provide billions of additional dollars in aid to families and students to afford college based on your tax code. And that's never part of this conversation. You don't get credit for that. And for many states, your tax code provides a benefit of 25% greater than direct aid to students. Another interesting part of the conversation in Washington, D.C. around affordability are these pesky things called maintenance of effort. So I want to go back a little bit. Maintenance of effort, direct is a nice way to say it. Dictate is probably the more appropriate way to say it. How much a state will spend on a particular program. The federal-state partnership. It wasn't always quite like this, though. In the 1970s, we had what's referred to in the United States as collaborative federalism. There was a true state and federal partnership. That gave way over the next several decades to something that is framed as coercive federalism. We, the federal government, will help you, the states, only if you do the following. That is not an equal relationship anymore. And we, the states, formed the federal government. It's a very different situation. So that you know, there are more than 29 maintenance of effort requirements just on education alone. In fact, education is tied with the United States Department of Agriculture for the largest number of maintenance of effort requirements. And that ties your hands as state lawmakers. We know from studying investments into higher education that when state spending on higher ed is cyclical, and in good times, states plow money into research and development, facility building. They absolutely prioritize higher education. But in times of economic distress or slow growth, states will slow the investment and slow the growth of spending. What a maintenance of effort requirement will do is it creates a disincentive for you to put more money on the table because you have to hold to that spending over time, regardless of the economic reality in your state. So what we've heard from states as we're meeting with federal lawmakers, we've said on your behalf that a conversation about affordability must be balanced with the conversation about productivity and, as Dr. Crow said, completion. Our goal is to ensure that our citizens don't just go to college, but they complete college. And that's why we're making the investments. So what is going on in Washington, D.C.? Well, I'm going to give you a really quick overview of what's going on with the legislative branch. There's more going on with the executive branch, and then I want to highlight for you just very briefly 2 quick things that I want to make sure that are on your radar. So, in the United States legislative branch of government, there are in the House right now 2 really amazing bills in the United States House. They both have awesome names. One is PROSPER. The other is the AIM Higher Education Act. PROSPER is the House Republican bill. The Democratic bill is AIM Higher Act. Both great bills, both very different, both going nowhere. In the Senate, no bill, no name, no great graphic. That concludes my legislative update. All the actions down at 400 Maryland Avenue. The executive branch of government manages about $1.4 trillion in federal student aid. It's a very large number. I throw that out for you so you know what the stakes are. The administration has really enunciated 4 key priorities in the last 18 months of their work. The first has been regulatory relief. They have looked to roll back guidance that was issued by the prior administration that didn't go through the traditional regulatory process. The second thing is the Trump administration is looking to, as they frame it, right-size the federal role in higher education to further spur innovation. Thirdly, the administration is looking to smooth the transition to enable more lifelong learning, more ongoing learning, which has become fundamental to our economy. And lastly, and this is a bipartisan priority shared amongst lawmakers in Washington, D.C., without question, all federal policymakers are working to reset and change the narrative about a 4-year degree. A mistake was made in our country. The career and technical education was a lesser than or a second-class system. Career and technical education, as we are learning through our economy, is equally important to our economic security as well as the preservation of our democracy. And so those are the priorities that the administration has enunciated, and they have been busy. First and foremost, as you've probably caught on the national news, the president has proposed the consolidation of parts of the Department of Education with parts of the Department of Labor to eliminate duplication, to streamline training. The thought being that why is adult education at the Department of Education, and why is adult education at the Department of Labor, and those programs don't speak to one another? You and your states have been doing very similar things. The administration also just last week, little light reading for those of you that are interested, issued their borrower defense publication. It's only 436 pages long, so if you're going back to the West Coast, or East Coast, it might be a good thing to pick up. But the borrower defense rule talks about what are the federal rules around loan forgiveness for students who have been cheated or defrauded through their through the schools that they went to. Under the old standard, it was believed that it was too easy for students to claim that they had been defrauded by their institution of higher education. So the Trump administration is seeking to upgrade the standard by which one can get loan forgiveness and have a tighter process. It's estimated that this would save taxpayers about $700 million a year, or $12 billion over the next decade. Certainly, this move has been met with strong opposition from Democratic members as well as advocacy groups who believe that these institutions are actually taking advantage of students. On November 1, we're expecting the gainful employment regulations to be issued. This department is also looking at accreditation, something very important to the institutions that you help oversee. The department also rolled back an affirmative action guidance that was issued by the prior administration. They withdrew this as part of a larger effort to remove anything that was issued for guidance that didn't go through the regulatory process. Now, there's two things in particular that I want to highlight for you that I think that you should be aware of. And the first is student loan debt collection. As states, you have been regulating what is allowable for debt collection of federal loans. You can't do that anymore the same way that you did before. About a year and a half ago, the National Council of Higher Education Resources, a trade group that represents student loan companies, urged the department to preempt state authority and no longer allow you to establish regulations on federal student debt collection. 26 of your attorneys generals wrote to the department and opposed this action. And numerous lawsuits have been filed, most notably lawsuits in Massachusetts, Illinois, and Washington. Now, state views on this matter absolutely vary. But as anticipated, the U.S. Department of Education issued a rule that said that states may not regulate student loan companies that service and collect federal student debt. And the House is looking to codify this through legislative activity. Now, there's been a lot of conversation about this in Washington, D.C. Under the Higher Education Act, the Secretary of Education has the authority to issue this rule. However, does she have the ability to regulate the financial services sector? And the Conference of State Bankers doesn't think that she does. So more on that later. The other thing I want to highlight for you are changes that have been made to the federal, the free application for student financial aid, otherwise known as FAFSA. By a quick show of hands, how many of you in the last 10 years have had to complete the FAFSA? You can create a support group at your table. Ronald Reagan, I'm a parent myself. Ronald Reagan, former governor of our host state here in California, said that the 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I am here from the government, I'm from the government, and I am here to help. I don't know if he ever had to fill out a FAFSA, but as a parent, the 9 most terrifying words to me are, I am from the federal student aid, complete your FAFSA. It's about 130 questions long. It's more complicated than completing taxes. And as Senator Alexander, who leads the Senate Education Committee, he's termed it the dreaded FAFSA form. In fact, we know from research that about 1.2 million students that are eligible for Pell don't even get their Pell Award because the FAFSA is so complicated and so difficult to complete. So while there may be not a lot of consensus in Washington, D.C. with how to proceed with the Higher Education Act, they have at least found a common enemy, and that is in FAFSA. Just last week, the U.S. Department of Education released for the first time ever a mobile-friendly FAFSA so that students can use their mobile devices to start completing their paperwork. But for there to be real and lasting reform, it will require legislative action. I'm also going to skip ahead just a little bit. Earlier this year, in the new tax law, it changed requirements around the 529 programs. Almost all of your states have a sponsored 529 program. 529 traditionally has been a great way for families to save money for college. Under the new tax law, families may also be able to utilize a 529 account to pay for K-12 expenses. We raise this for you to be aware of because it's an opportunity to not only look at how you're executing on the new tax law and complying with that for the purposes for families to be able to invest money for K-12, but this gives you an opportunity to review your 529 in its entirety. I'm brief on time, so I'm going to skip ahead to one thing I want to also make sure that you have on your radar, and that's the education and training vouchers from ETV. This year in particular, we've received a number of requests from state legislators hoping to help foster youth in the United States access higher education. One of the things we wanted to make sure that you were aware of is through the Chafee Foster Youth Program, the ETV grants, foster youth are eligible for up to $5,000 per year to attend college or training. Really important that foster youth apply for FAFSA, because if they do, they may not only be Pell eligible, but they may also be eligible to receive one of these grants. Your state, each of your states, receives a direct formula amount from the federal government for this purpose. So, I don't want to go on any longer because Ben is going to talk to you about what's going on with innovation in the states. But if you have any questions and if you need anything, please reach out to us. We'd like to keep you up to date about what's going on in Washington, D.C. Thank you.
I know we're pressed for time. I thank you so much. This has been a great session. And I just want to very quickly show you a few things that we've got going on in our higher education group. This has been a great session. The one thing that, if I may, to draw from what Dr. Crow was speaking of, I was in a conversation with a university administrator, a new strategic plan to go after non-traditional adult students who had dropped out, to use the term, to come back and invite them to come on back in. And the traditional theme has been, come on back, we'll give you a second chance. And he said that his university, I think this draws from the new model for American higher education, their approach now was, come on back and give us a second chance. So I think that that kind of encapsulates some of the things we're talking about today. I'd like to just very briefly talk with the higher education group in Denver. My friend and colleague, Sunny Day, works with us. And also want to acknowledge Marilyn Villalobos, my friend and colleague, who does tremendous work on a database that I want to demonstrate for you briefly. And this is available to you as legislators and to your staff. And we're still building certain components of this. We'll be adjusting this as we get info requests from you. Certain things come up. But what this does is three components: governance, funding models, and affordability issues. And what you can do is look at the policy that your state is doing and click on your state. Let's see if we pick a state here. So I've picked Arkansas, the blue. And here else that lights up are those who have similar policies for that particular component. What this allows you and your staff to do is take a look at different issues related to governance, budgeting models, and affordability issues. Who else is working on the same issues you are? What's the approaches they're doing? What are some ways they're tweaking to meet their communities? How might you learn from them? And we're happy to facilitate this with you. Just contact us. This is on our website. for the sake of time, I won't go through a lot of details here, but I'd like for you to know that that's there. We'll send that out. Also, I'd like for you to know we've secured funding for an 8-part series of briefs that will focus on specific issues that universities are dealing with, much like what Dr. Crow spoke of today, and some of the challenges that institutions are having this new economic global economy, demographic changes, population shifts in the states. I know a lot of states are now talking about mergers and acquisitions and all kinds of things. So what we've done is secured funding for an 8-part series, the first of which has been finished and published, and we've got a stack here. I'll put them on the table down here. There's also a stack down in room 153, which is where the education track is for the convention. But this one is the first one is an overview. And it's meant to be readable and practical and give you the opportunity to see what are some things that universities are wrestling with, what are some ways as a state legislature you can help assist them or help guide them in some new ways of thinking. So I just want to take that very quickly, and we will have this available for you, and our information will be on our website. And if we can be of any service to you, that is what we do. So thank you very much. Senator, thank you. Close us out.
Thank you, Ben and Joan and Dr. Crow. This has been very informative. I hope you've all enjoyed it as much as I have. Let's thank our panel one more time. And 153 is where the next session is.